Друзі, звук 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. У нас є готовність. Можна запускати відлік, якщо готовність є в апаратній. We'll start our event in a minute. Нема? We will need another 3 minutes before we start.
Перший український це гучність. Будь ласка.
One, two, three, sound check, 1, 2, 3, English channel.
Пані та панове,
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Andrei Shevchenko. On behalf of Ukraine Media Center and the Ukrinform team, I'm glad to welcome all journalists telling the world about our fight for freedom. And our today's guest is Roman Gorbach, head of the personnel department at the ground forces staff of our armed forces of Ukraine. Roman, what will you tell us about the current situation with staffing at armed forces of Ukraine, including its ground forces? Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for inviting me. About your question, I would like to say that for more than 2 months as we have been running general mobilization in Ukraine, about quantitative and qualitative parameters, I can tell you that all those parameters have been achieved for 100% or even more. The mobilization is continuing now it has slowed down, but not because we failed to do something, but simply because at the end of February and in early March, we have mostly staffed the armed forces of Ukraine and other components of Ukraine forces now, we just bring additional staff, just adding personnel to military units. In those units which need more people. So now the pace of that mobilization has slowed down, but it's according to our plans. Mobilization was announced for 3 months, starting from February 24, and those 3 months will soon end this month, but it doesn't mean that mobilization will definitely end. It will all depend on the situation that we will see by that time, and if there will be a further need to further add to further increase number of people in our military units, then the leadership of our country will make a decision if needed to extend this mobilization. We will get questions from the audience if there are any, and we have a question sent in advance by Vladimir Verbyany from Bloomberg, and it's just about what you just described. The journalist reminds us that according to the law, mobilization has to end on the 24th of March, and he asks, does it mean that it will be automatically extended after that date, or we may expect certain pause, certain break until a decision is made on the next wave of mobilization? Well, it will all depend on the situation that will be there at the time when mobilization is to finish. If there is a need, if military action, combat action continues, then definitely there will be a need to bring specialists to our military units. So I think that the leadership will extend mobilization after the 24th of May. Do you have any questions? Yeah. I'm Dmitry Didorov from Espresso TV channel. At the beginning of this war, and basically during this time, many people were forced to leave Kyiv, to leave their permanent locations, and there were rumors that males are forcefully mobilized at checkpoints, at any other like stops of public transportation and so on. Can you prove or disprove this information? Well, when there is mobilization, when people are drafted because of mobilization, then there is nothing voluntary there. Voluntary procedure is only when you join the military service as a contract service person. But when there is mobilization, or when you are a conscript drafted, that's a duty for each and every citizen to defend their country. And when somebody says that they were forcefully given those notifications at checkpoints, like those summons and any notification for people that they have to come to the territorial drafting center, you know, there is no established procedure where it could be done. You know, when you got it, that notification, you have to come there. And those people who just didn't want to perform their duty, they called it a forceful process. But basically, you know, there is only contract service which is voluntary, and mobilization is just an obligation, it's mandatory. Could you please also tell me what will happen to those males who are to be mobilized? They already got those notifications, those summons, who left Ukraine in some illegal way, who are abroad. Those people subject to military service who got their summons, if it's established that they left Ukraine in an illegal way, then they try to avoid compliance with their duty for military service. And the laws in force establish criminal liability for such action. So those people will be prosecuted according to Ukraine's criminal laws. The same way as there is criminal liability is like help in any illegal crossing of the border if such facts are found. Yeah, there is a question. You're welcome. Дякую. I'm Vitaly Golod from Ukrinform. Is my understanding correct that the fourth wave of mobilization will only be about officers? that the fourth wave of mobilization will be for officers only. And you mentioned 100%, like previous three waves, previous three stages. Well, there has been 100% quantity, 100% numbers achieved, but what about quality? And if in the fourth wave is about officers, doesn't mean that soldiers will not be mobilized in fourth wave. I'd like to correct you immediately. There are no waves or stages as such. No special periods. When I was first interviewed, I used that word, periods. What I mean was, first of all, like there's at some time there were more people drafted, mobilized. At some point there was some sort of pause, but in documental terms there is no wave or something. There is just one wave. It's just that sometimes we mobilize more people, sometimes fewer numbers, now even fewer numbers, and the next wave is not planned as yet. Even if we imagine that there is that new wave, then not only officers will be mobilized. It will all depend on the situation in those combat areas. It will all depend on the need for servicemen. Maybe there will be a need for officers, maybe there will be a need for sergeants, maybe for soldiers. Now about the quality. The quality of people whom we have drafted by now and whom we will be drafting soon, this quality is rather high. I can compare it against 2014 when there was mobilization, 6 waves of mobilization. Now people are much more motivated, and maybe this is the case because now this war has affected us at much larger scale, and almost all people, almost everybody has had this feeling that we have to defend our country. Nobody will do it on our behalf. So there's rather high motivation for military service. Indeed, there are people who try to avoid this duty, but there are very few of those. And it does not change the general picture. I would say there are just individual cases, rare cases. Now about the quality. All those people who have been drafted, who have been mobilized, they have been drafted according to their military specialization, registered military specialization. Those, some other people have spent some time getting some retraining at training centers. And now, again, we are drafting people who already have some experience of military service or experience of training military exercises in peaceful time. Thank you. Next question. Next question.
And you're from defense. Of course, your country in the war right now, in the middle of the war, and of course, we have a lot of international media here. We understanding the martial law, all controlled by your government defense. Of course, we have a defense issued our media pass. As we are just from Lviv, and the ambassador knows me where I'm from, and I'm from Phoenix Saturday TV, and obviously I had questions against my human nature. And of course, we are run of petrol, and we have a couple of international media person and the guarding journalists in we are same hotel. We don't have a petrol, and of course, the petrol is controlled by the government, and we are very hard to get a petrol. And the problem is for me is today's I got a message from a media center to visit the Brussels mayor of Brussels to visit on the site. We calculate I have around about 120 kilometers backwards, and my petrol is only like 60 kilometers I can go, which means I think the same people have international media have same problem, and we have to.
Do you have a question to ask?
Yeah, the question is, can we have? Would you please authorize to help our international media have some petrol ticket so we can get a petrol to go on the site to report what happens in your country? Thank you.
Я, може, почну відповідати, що, як ми розуміємо,
Maybe as far I will start answering by saying that we have a lot of challenges during wartime which we don't have in peaceful time. I think that problem with petrol is the same for everybody being here. But we know that this is actually the same an important thing for our government. If our guests have something to add on that, then I will join your answer. We are all in the same boat, I would say, so unfortunately we have to overcome the same challenges.
Speakman, the problem is everything's controlled by the government of defense, of course, and I think it's the patriot ticket issued by your government and the defense as well. But our media people here wanted to do the stories, and the problems we can't do it because we have no source to try to get a ticket to feel the petrol. And well, we can come here every day, of course, but we might could do better for your country to explore more stories on site. Look at the pictures, people killing, and your civilians lying on and the horse destroyed, and the people lying on the street, just like they are human. They are not animals.
I'll encourage us to stick with the topic of this press conference.
All right, sorry.
But I'll just tell you that
Maybe I asked too much.
That of course the government does make sure that our armed forces have the things they need. But if we talk about gasoline, most of the gasoline that people in the streets of Kyiv get, it's private sector, it's commercial, and we'll just have to deal with the same challenges. And I'll be happy to discuss this with you after this.
Thank you very much indeed,
Thanks for your
Ambassador.
understanding.
Thank you. Thank you.
Якщо у нас ще є запитання в залі,
If you have any more questions in the audience, I would like to argue about occupied territories. At the moment we have quite a lot of our territories occupied. Do you maintain any connection with military drafting officers from those occupied territories? So what happens to those people, you know, if there are those drafting officers, military commissioners, officers who betrayed Ukraine, and how do you treat the mobilization, the drafting to that so-called army of so-called Donetsk People's Republic? If you capture those people, do we consider them as our people or military servicemen of an enemy's army? How do we treat it? First of all, no one territorial drafting center, that's what previously was called military commissioners' offices, no one territorial drafting center has been occupied, no one has betrayed. All those territorial drafting centers have been evacuated in a planned way with their documents to peaceful territories. And when territories are deoccupied, liberated, then those drafting officers, those territorial drafting officers come back to their respective territories with their records, and they start or continue working according to their tasks assigned to them by the government about mobilization and other tasks they have to perform according to the resolution by the Cabinet of Ministers. So no one territorial drafting center has betrayed. What is happening on that side, on those occupied territories? Of course it's illegal when our Ukrainian citizens are mobilized to military units, uniformed agencies of other countries. But when they are captured, it's not about Ukrainian armed forces anymore. Then there are law enforcement agencies handling such people. Thank you. I have a question for you. We hear in the news various things about mobilization in the Russian Federation. There is some information about some hidden mobilization. There is information that soon, very soon, Russia may announce full-fledged mobilization. You, as a military personnel expert, how do you feel about those news? What sort of conclusions you, as an expert, can make? Well, first of all, indeed, there are many rumors like that, but those facts that we see now, it's very difficult to hide anything now, you know, even though there is a concept of hidden mobilization, but you know, to run a hidden mobilization in the country with current state of information technologies, it would be impossible. If it's indeed launched in the Russian Federation, then using our intelligence units and our citizens will know about it the next day. So now there is no confirmation that in Russian Federation there is any any mobilization. Indeed, it's being done in so-called Donetsk People's Republic, Luhansk People's Republic. We see it. We see that we capture their servicemen which have been drafted, but mobilization in Russian Federation, no, we don't have any confirmation as yet. I cannot say that it will not start, say, tomorrow. It will all depend on the situation on the front line. We often hear about some difference in terms of military spirit between Russian and the Ukrainian military. As a personnel officer, what can you say? Do you really see this difference in their spirits? Of course. There are facts that we all see. There are witnesses, testimonies, and the way combat action is run by us and by our enemy, it all confirms. You know, you can see, there are much higher numbers of personnel and military equipment that our enemy has, but still our military has been much more efficient and effective in their combat action. We see that Kiev has been liberated, northern oblasts, northern provinces have been liberated. The enemy was forced to withdraw, although they had many more personnel and equipment. That means high military spirit. I worked in our military units, and indeed our servicemen are very patriotic. Even those who have been mobilized to some logistics support military units, they submit petitions. They ask them for them to be transferred to combat units to help defend our country in a more active way. Thank you. Roman Gorbach, Head of Personnel Department of the Staff of Ground Forces of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Thank you for this press briefing. Our next briefing will be at 2:40. Alexander Motizianek, spokesperson of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. Thank you. Thank you.